So, welcome to Krishnacore Chronicles number 24. And this evening, I've got with me Tony 108, who was the former bass player for 108 and Shouter. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, I know that we've spoken before this anyway. And you were going to explain to me about how you kind of first got into Krishna consciousness, how you first met the Krishnas, etc.
Well, um, I was raised in a secular household, um, but as a teenager, or like as a kid, I was really into like martial arts and yoga, um, like Chinese kung fu theater on the weekend was like my favorite thing growing up. I had I had like some general interest in religion because my mother had friends that were of different religions. She had a Rastafarian friend, she had Jewish friends. My half of my family is Catholic, um, but my mother was raised in the Catholic school and she hated it. So she didn't raise me in any particular religion. Then as a teen, I was like, just like moderately interested in like different religions or whatever. But I had a high school teacher who taught social studies, and one time he mentioned the Hare Krishnas, specifically the community in New Vrindavan, and this was in the 80s, mid 80s. So this teacher was really cool. He every morning you'd walk into the room, the chalkboard would have a song lyric or a chorus line or some quote, and it was always something really inspiring. It was from like Shakespeare or um, someone important historically, and also Black Flag lyrics or Depeche Mode lyrics. So um, he was very cool. He was a fantastic teacher. He changed my life because he was such a good teacher. He was just engulfed in his teaching, and when he taught world history, he would really get into the um, uh, not just the material in general, but he would really talk about like the religiosity of the person he was speaking of. So that kind of inspired me. But he mentioned the New Vrindavan community a few times. Um, I didn't know anything about it, but it sounded interesting. I think one time he may have had a pamphlet, so I saw the images of it's a big community, big property in West Virginia. So that was like sort of my introduction to the idea of Hare Krishnas. I didn't know much about it. And then at some point, I met Hare Krishna devotee somewhere, like after high school, right as I was ending high school. And we chatted for a little bit, and he gave me some like overview, and he gave me a Bhagavad Gita. Um, and I briefly went through the Bhagavad Gita, so I was somewhat familiar, but not like intimately familiar. And then I went to Ohio State University, and there's a small temple on campus or just off campus, and I went there with a friend. We went there for the Sunday feast. This is in Columbus, Ohio. That small temple, the devotees were really cool. They were friendly, and the food was fantastic, and I thought the artwork was beautiful, and the music, everything was just really cool. They were a satellite center for the New Vrindavan community. I didn't know anything about the politics, the history, anything like this. But that was, when I first started learning about the Bhagavad Gita or the Hare Krishna movement or whatever, it was with this New Vrindavan temple in Columbus, Ohio. And then me and my roommate, I lived in this house with hardcore kids and punk rockers. And one weekend we decided to go check it out. So we drove down to West Virginia, and it's stunning. It's a beautiful property. There's a palace, a massive temple, big palace dedicated to Prabhupada, and if anybody goes there, they'll be impressed. It's beautiful, and they like imported all the marble and yada yada yada. So that was sort of my introduction. That was in Ohio. After that, I went out to San Francisco, and when I was living in San Francisco, there's a small temple in San Francisco and a Govinda's restaurant. But there's also a big temple in Berkeley, beautiful temple in Berkeley. If anyone ever has a chance, it's gorgeous. Berkeley itself is a beautiful area. So I started hanging out, going to the Sunday feast with some hardcore kids. And then I got more familiar with, like the literature and the culture. Made some friends at the temple, and then I was looking for an apartment, and one of the guys that I had met was like, "Oh, we have a room for rent in San Francisco." So I moved into this apartment with these devotees that used to live in the temple lifestyle, right? Like you live like a monk in the temple, and that was a big thing back then. I don't think it's the same anymore. They don't push people to move into the temple like they used to. So I lived with these devotees who were older than me, who had a history of living in different temples, and were involved in the Hare Krishna movement out there in San Francisco. I didn't know at the time, but they were involved with Hansadutta, who's like a controversial guru, and he kind of split off from the mainstream. So New Vrindavan also is like they were separate from the Hare Krishna movement, and then the Berkeley movement also. Some of those people were also like a splinter group, right? They had some disagreements I didn't know anything about, but they were like, like a slightly different denomination of the same religion. And they were just super cool. They weren't preachy or obnoxious, but they were friendly and supportive. And so my interest grew naturally, and I was surrounded by people that knew a lot about it. So that's sort of how I started learning about it. And I used to go to the Berkeley Temple for the Sunday feast. It was a lot of fun back then. A whole bunch of hardcore punk kids, skaters, and hippies, and we would go to the Sunday feast, and it was a big thing, and it was a lot of fun. So this group that I was involved in, they were like Hansadutta devotees, and then only later on did I learn, like, oh, why is this group separate? Who is this guru, and what did he do? And then you start to like learn some of the crazy shit that was going on with the Hare Krishna movement, and I was like, yo, this is nuts. Like, there is a reputation, or used to have a really strong reputation for being like really culty, but then also it had also, apparently, I didn't know, it had this reputation for being like a bunch of like gangsters and criminals.
Yeah.
So when I found out, like, I didn't know the distinction that much, but I was like, whatever. The people I was hanging out with were very cool. I didn't have any beef with anybody. So then you start to learn like the history, and then you read Monkey on a Stick, and you're like, what the like? um, so it was that was my introduction. Then I also met Vic Vic Dakar or Vraj Kishore, he was playing. I forget what band he was in. It was maybe an Inside Out. So the main venue for hardcore punk shows in Berkeley is called Gilman Street, and they had all the best shows. So back then when you're a teenager, you're going to all the shows, and that was like the main venue in Berkeley. So I met Vic when he was at Gilman Street. I forget what show it was, but we became friends. We started talking. We stayed in touch. And then at some point, I think it was the very first Shelter tour. I believe the very first tour Shelter did was with Quicksand, and people know, like fans know, the very first tour that Shelter did. And they came through Berkeley, and I met Raghunath. And so we just were like friendly and like pen pals. You didn't have the internet back then. You used to write letters. So at some point, I haven't thought about this in a long time. So that's why I'm trying to like search my memory banks here. So that's how I became friends with Raghunath. I met him at the temple, and I was hanging out at the temple a lot, and I was chanting and praying and reading the literature. So my religiosity or my practice was developing, despite the like political differences or the history that I didn't know that much about. And then at some point, Raghunath said, hey, do you want to come out to Philadelphia? We're all living in the Philly temple. And so then I left San Francisco and went out to Philly, and then went on tour with Shelter. Lived in the Philly temple as a brahmachari for a while. Like I was like a celibate monk for like, probably like 3 years. But I lived in the Philly temple, also a big hangout spot for a lot of hardcore punk kids that were also getting into Krishna. I should say that I was like a hardcore kid and very much influenced by the Cro-Mags. Like I was like the biggest Cro-Mags fan. I had all their stuff, T-shirts, posters, yada yada yada. So my introduction, like what I knew about like hardcore kids or New York hardcore is that some of them were into Krishna, like the Cro-Mags and Cause for Alarm. And they were a little bit older, a little more harder than the straight edge culture, right? So anyway, so that's kind of how I got into it, and then went to New Vrindavan a few times. I actually went and spent like a week at New Vrindavan, or a long weekend in New Vrindavan.
Right.
And in fact, I bought a Volkswagen bus and picked it up in West Virginia and drove it cross country back to San Francisco. So when I did that, I stayed for a long weekend. Actually, my girlfriend at the time was a long-term Hare Krishna devotee, and also part of this like Hansadutta crew. So when we went out there together, because she had friends that lived there, And so I spent time at New Vrindavan. At that time, New Vrindavan was not part of ISKCON.
Okay.
Because they had been kicked out or separated, and then later became a interfaith community, and then much later on was integrated back into ISKCON, the
Okay.
proper Hare Krishna movement. So when I stayed there, they weren't part of ISKCON. I didn't really understand all these nuances. I just knew that it was like, a little different, and some of these dudes were like gangsters. So um, so that was my experience. When I moved out to Philly and lived with Shelter, that was we were sort of involved with the proper Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON. And then me and Vic were friends. So when Vic, uh, he was playing in Shelter, and then him and Raghunath butted heads. So Vic started 108, and I joined him. I'm the founding member, original bass player. Vic was very like Vraj Kishore is he's really smart, very dedicated dude, and he made a very strong effort to reform some of the things he didn't like that any normal person wouldn't like with the Hare Krishna movement. So because I had some experience with these splitter groups, I guess you can call them.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. There are some things I was not entirely cool with, like, okay, so the separation, like women have to be over there. So it seemed like there was some obvious misogyny. But I didn't, I wasn't as much of an issue for me. But for Vic, he made a sincere effort to reform the Hare Krishna movement, and so he put out pamphlets. He put out some literature on this particular point. So I did tours with Shelter. Like I started as a roadie. Then I was like a road manager. When when 108 started touring, we had this reputation, 108 or Vraj had this reputation for being like pretty aggressive and
Really?
yeah, not like a contrarian, but like someone who wasn't just like hanging out, but someone who was on a mission.
Mm.
And part of his mission was not just to develop his own religious practice, but also to teach or preach and also reform the Hare Krishna movement, because it did have a reputation for having all kinds of problems. So everywhere we went, we usually had a little attitude. The Krishna devotees would give us attitude, because Shelter was like poppy, fun, pop punk, and Raghunath was that's also his sort of like very positive personality. And Vraj Kishore was a different personality. So wherever we went with 108, like they were like, oh, these dudes are here. Like, so Vraj put out quite a few pieces of literature, like fanzines and pamphlets, and then you do these talks, right? So you do the Sunday feast. There's someone who gives a speech or has a discussion.
Yeah.
Usually on the Bhagavad Gita or something related to the theology or the culture or whatever, the Prabhupada or whatever. So that was 108's sort of how 108 differentiated itself from Shelter, was Vraj Kishore was on a mission. And so he probably wrote a lot more about that. I think it's been a while since I read his book. What is it? Trainwrecks and
Yeah. Hard. I've got it here in front of me. Hardcore, Trainwrecks and Transcendence, Collision of Hardcore
yeah.
and Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe he talks. I read it when it first came out. I have it right over there, so I could probably look at it later. But anyway, so that was like the early days of 108 and Shelter. Obviously, this is sort of a summary, so there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm skipping over. Um, but then, so me and Fudge went down to DC,
Mm.
um, the Potomac, which is just outside of DC. The temple down there, it's a massive property, um, also beautiful. Um, like out just all surrounding Washington D.C., like the area out there. It's absolutely just gorgeous. So the temple in Potomac, Maryland, big property. Um, we actually had a dedicated recording studio and practice studio, whereas in Philly we were just like practicing in like a room.
Okay.
Um, and then at the time we were doing like Shelter was like becoming more popular. They were doing big shows. Used to do a lot of shows in the area. So like close to Philly, there's a town called Reading, and there's a big venue, it's like a skate park. It was called Unisound. And big shows. And then 108's first, well, so 108 did a show with Jay on vocals. It was only one show.
Yeah.
But then um, once we, so I believe we did, so 108 did one show with Jay, but it didn't work out. I don't recall the details. So Vic was then singing and playing guitar, and he wrote everything. Like I
Yeah.
contributed a little bit. There's a couple songs I contributed to, but Vrej did everything. He wrote the drum line, the guitar and bass, and the vocals, and he sang. Um, so we 108 played its first few shows with Vrej was singing and playing guitar, and that was at Unisound. There's a lot of photos. You ever see these early photos of 108 at Unisound? You'll see Vic playing guitar and singing.
Mm.
Then after some time, I don't recall, then Rob Fish, Ross Raj, he joined 108 on vocals. He was in Resurrection, which was they were a pretty popular hardcore band from New Jersey. So I didn't know Rob, um, but I guess he was friends with Vic. So that's sort of a rough overview of the early days. So then we started practicing. We went down to Potomac and started recording. We it's possible we even recorded Holy Name in Philly,
Okay.
like in a little crappy little room in this like old 19th century home that was always freezing cold. Um, So I don't recall the details. I'm also like, it's been a long time, but also I'm like, I'm busy. I'm a full-time student right now.
Mm.
Um, so, but we went down to Potomac and maybe we did the second album there. I don't remember. But anyways, we recorded the first album, Holy Name, which is a fantastic album in
Yeah.
my opinion. There was a production problem, so the whole album was like one track. You couldn't skip tracks on the CD. It was like one track, the whole album. Um, but so anyway, so that's the early days of 108. The first album was Holy Name. Um, Great. Still love that. It's a fantastic
It
album.
is a great album. Yeah.
So anyway, so then the first shows we were doing were mostly like at Unisound, the shows in the New England area, Connecticut. Um, I believe even that one show that where Jay sang may have been Connecticut. Connecticut the New England in general had a big hardcore punk, especially straight edge scene. So there was always shows and big shows, and there was different like sub genres or subcultures within hardcore punk. So what they call Krishnacore now, um, that was like growing. But there was also like, straight edge was becoming more militant. The older bands were still doing like New York hardcore bands. There was thrash. So there was like hardcore punk at the time was like at its peak. And there was always shows, and the shows were amazing. Like before I lived in the Temple, all the Revelation bands used to do these big shows. So like Gorilla Biscuits and Judge and um, um, instead, all these shows were big, huge shows. Hold on one second. Street Sweeper just went by. Anyway, so that was peak hardcore, late 80s, early 90s. I grew up in Miami, and the hardcore scene in Miami was just incredible. And then also when I lived in San Francisco, also a big scene with, like famous venues. I did a bunch of other band music stuff with other guys. But when I moved to Philadelphia, I was like dedicated to being a devotee, living as a brahmachari, and also I, worked with 108 and Shelter. So we did all these shows, and then we did a really big summer tour, like a 5 month, I believe, a 5 month tour, and I think that was 92 or 93. And that was, for probably most of us, it was like one of the best summers of our lives, because it was just an incredible experience for all of us all around. And we went on tour. We would usually stay at temples. Sometimes kids that were like fans, they would invite us back to their home. We would cook dinner for their family and, sleep in the living room or whatever. Overwhelmingly positive experience for most of us. I'm sure some people had like falling outs and whatnot. So we did this big, I think it was a 5 month tour.
Yeah.
Shelter, 108, and then either Into Another or Zero Tolerance from Buffalo were the openers. And we went all over the place, and it was incredible. And the shows were amazing. And the kids we met were super cool, very supportive. We did all kinds of cool things. Like you stay at these temples all throughout the country, and you get to see all these different temples. We played Salt Lake City. The Krishna temple out there is it's a llama farm. So you're outside of the city on a farm, and they got like llamas running around. We went hiking up in the mountains. Salt Lake City is beautiful. We played a really big, like a festival, I guess. I forget. Maybe Rancid played.
Right.
Yeah, I forget. So, anyways, the person who booked the tours for Shelter lived in Salt Lake City.
Mm.
So it was a huge festival with a bunch of bands. Before I moved to Philly to play with Shelter, I actually did some stuff with Tim Armstrong after Operation Ivy, and before Rancid. We did a few sessions together.
Okay.
I sold him my Marshall Halfstad, my amplifier, which he used on the first Rancid tour. We did that show in Salt Lake City. I'm pretty sure somebody knows. I'm pretty sure Rancid played, because I remember they were there. Also, Zach. So that before Shelter, Vic was in Inside Out from San Diego.
Yeah.
And they're an incredible band. And I believe they had a song called Rage Against the Machine. When they split up,
Mm.
Vic went to Shelter, and then Zach started Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
So one of those Inside Out songs is really popular. It's called No Spiritual Surrender.
Yeah.
So we did that as a, Vic wrote the song. So we did that often in the 108 shows. Anyway, so at that Salt Lake City show, Zach came on stage and sang No Spiritual Surrender. The crowd went bonkers. Like, it was wild. We also went all the way up into South Dakota. We went hiking. We slept out like on a riverbed. We went rock climbing and diving and stuff like that. We went hiking up in Northern California. We played shows all over the country. Sometimes you play these small shows, and then sometimes you play these bigger shows or bigger towns. Everywhere we went, it was a blast. The kids were really cool and supportive. The Krishna devotees would usually make Krishna food or prasadam, bring it to the shows. So there was some backlash or whatever to the Krishnas being involved in hardcore punk. I don't think in the big picture, I don't think it was, there was a few moments here and there. Some people didn't like the Krishnas being involved, but it wasn't really that big of an issue, I don't think. Then I'll have to look at the tour dates. Anyways, we did a big tour, like a 5-month tour. We had a school bus that was converted into like a travel bus with a kitchen and a temple.
Yeah.
And so there was the van with the trailer with the equipment and the school bus, and then another van, because we had a whole bunch of people with us, and we all had a blast. Anyways, we played a big show in Buffalo. There was a huge brawl. Everybody knows about.
Can you talk about a little bit more about it? Because I wanted to ask you about the bus, and I also wanted to ask you about the Buffalo gig as well.
The bus, I forget the dude's name that converted the bus. He was a very nice guy, very cool.
Is it Danadara Swami? I always get.
No. So Danadara Swami was Raghunath's guru, his spiritual master.
Okay.
But before, on the very first Shelter tour, they had a bus, like a Greyhound bus, and that was the guru who was based in DC or Potomac, okay. Gunagrahi Swami, I think. So it was a Krishna fest. Shelter was, you know what I'm saying? Like, there was always preaching and book distribution and programs involved with the local temples and feeding the kids. Everyone would go back after the show to the Sunday feast. It was a very like a communal and fun experience overall. We played this big show in Buffalo. I believe we played with Snapcase and a few others. A big venue. And Raghunath has talked about this. A few people have talked about this because it was such a big event. After the show, it was a big venue inside like a warehouse. After the show, I brought the van inside to load it up. And as I'm loading it up, some kid comes up and he was like, Tony, I was Tony 108 back there. Hey, Tony 108, there's a fight. And I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, there's hardcore. There was a lot of fights, right? Always. Every show there was fights. He's like, no, like, it's bad. You got to come take a look. So I came around the van and I saw my buddy Mark on the ground getting pummeled by 3 or 4 dudes, and they had hockey sticks. And Mark was a singer from Zero Tolerance who was from Buffalo. They were like a thrash, a crossover band, hardcore metal. I love the music. They were one of my favorite bands back then. The singer is a good friend of mine, and the bass player, Eric, is a good friend of mine. So when I saw Mark on the ground getting beat up by like 3 or 4 people with hockey sticks or baseball bats or whatever. I was like, oh shit, that's it, we're done. So then I saw some kids running inside. I was like, all right, let's get out of here. So I came back to the van and I was like, yo, throw the stuff in and let's get out of here right away. And as I was trying to get into the van, some big dude comes up to me. Big dude, like towering over me, just solid muscle. And he was like, yo, you want to get shot? And I was like, I thought I would try to explain. No, actually, we practice nonviolence and we're actually studying to be priests. Bam! I got punched in the face. And so I jumped in the van and people were like scrambling all over the place. Kids dived underneath the van to hide. Kids were running. These dudes were big and they were just pumped. They were just beating the shit out of people. Because it was like skater, punker kid, you know, like teenagers at a hardcore show. And these dudes were just bam, bam, just beating the shit out of everyone. So I jumped in the van. As I jump in, I go to turn the ignition on. And the guy next to me in the passenger seat, his name was Henry. He was filming. So anybody who's familiar with there was a tour video. I think it's a VHS. It's online or it's on YouTube now. It's called Sankirtan Yagna, I believe. A lot of those videos were filmed by Henry.
Okay.
So Henry's sitting in the passenger seat with all the gear, all his, you know, camera equipment. And somebody said, Tony, we're trapped. They blocked us in. And I looked and I was like, the entrance to the warehouse, those people had pulled their car like in front of the exit. So obviously so that we couldn't get out. And I was like, oh, hell no. As I turned the engine on, to my left, there was a couple, a boy and a girl, baseball bats. And they were walking right towards me. And as I put the van in drive, somebody swung the bat and smashed the window. And I punched it. I just hit the accelerator, like literally just floored it. And yo, I hit that car so hard, it went like did like a 180. And I was like, yo, where's Dragunov? Because everyone was, it was chaos. It was total chaos. And there was a lot of people. It was a big show. I was like, where's Dragunov? The club was like it was in downtown Buffalo. It was on the corner. It wasn't like a proper block. It was like a corner of a block. So I drove around this way. And we were like, look for Dragunov. And came back right around the corner. As I stopped, the cops pulled up right away.
Yep.
The cops started lecturing me. Like, what are you doing? You reckless endangerment. You stupid kids where you're not even from here, yada, yada, yada. Was like yelling at me. And as he's yelling at me, first of all, I was like, yo, I just saved everybody's life. So fuck you. As I was getting lectured by the cop, Dragunov comes limping around the corner. He had his murdunga drum and a hockey stick that he got beat up with. And he was like, officer, I just got jumped by 4 or 5 people. This is the stick that I think he was bleeding. He was like, this is the stick they just beat me with. Because they had hockey sticks and baseball bats.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the cop grabbed the hockey stick and just threw it into the parking lot. And he's like, you kids today, like he was like chastising us for being in the wrong. I don't know. Anyways, at the end of the day, we left. I think we canceled the next show. Maybe 1 or 2 shows were canceled. I got 5 tickets, like leaving the scene of a crime, reckless endangerment, hit and run, or whatever. I forget it all at this point. But like, yeah, I literally saved people's lives by doing what I did. Um, that was a pretty big event because like I just got clocked, but like Raghunath got jumped, Mark got jumped, a bunch of kids got they got beat up. So by the time we got to the next venue, everybody had heard about it because a hardcore scene was like a community
Yeah.
and word travels. Um, then at some point, Raghunath wrote a song about it. Um, and so it's like a kind of a well-known tour story. It was these dudes were like much bigger than us. Um, and they were just out looking for trouble, right? And we just happened to be the right place at the right time for them. So anyways, that was one of the big brawls. And then a few shows after that, we played someplace, maybe like Kansas or Indianapolis, someplace in the middle of the country. And we're playing, or we're about, Shelter is about to go play, and these kids start fighting. And it was a
Mm.
big fight in the pit. Like there was always skinheads that would show up. There was a lot of violence in hardcore back then. Everybody knows this. But there was a big fight happening, and I was like, you know what, dude, I'm not gonna do this again. Like, let's just get out of here. We'll get our shit and go. And I was gonna go get paid and get out. And as I look up in the booth, the manager of the club was like packing his bag and getting ready to take off. So I bolted. I was like, nah, dude, you're not gonna split without paying us. Because we came, we set up, but you can't manage the crowd. No, not cool. So I ran after the dude and he took off. He went up these dark stairs and the stairs turned like a 90-degree turn. And where that turn happened, the ceiling was dropped. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't see, so it was dark. And I just ran and I just went, but God, hit my head on the cement. And so like I stumbled downstairs and then people saw me and they're like, oh my God, Tony got shot or he got punched. Like I was like, no, I was like dazed. I was like, no. Um, so we had to go. Me and Raghunath went to the hospital that night. Raghunath took me to the hospital. I got stitches in my head. And then later on, I think in Florida, Raghunath pulled out my stitches because there's no need to go back to a hospital for something like that. There was another big brawl in Boston one time with this gang called FSU.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was at a church. That venue was a former church, the church that was turned into a community center. So it was beautiful, like big stained glass windows. And we're playing on the stage, big crowd, and you just start seeing people fighting. And they weren't just fighting, it was like bullying, right? Like kids would come in, big dudes came and start pushing kids around. It was obvious. And so Raghunath noticed, I noticed Steve Reddy came up on the stage.
So
And we
this
were like,
was, yeah, this was because Kate has talked about this. This was just before the '93 tour because they had to get married because she went on tour with 108 and you guys. And go on, continue. Yeah, and Steve ended up with this black eye and he got married with this black eye.
Oh,
But
I don't remember that, but I know that
uh,
Steve came up. It was like Raghunath was like, watch these kids. Steve came up on stage, and I was like, all right, there's probably going to be another brawl.
and then like before you know it,
Steve jumped into the crowd and started brawling with like 3 or 4 dudes.
and like literally, like they were big dudes too. And I was like, oh shit. So I jumped in, and then it was just complete chaos at this church. Um, what I recall was I was rolling around on the ground with some dude. I was getting kicked in the head with a Doc Martin. I think it was a skinhead girl was kicking me in the head. The fight, fights back then at the shows, they would like roll. Like you start a fight with 2, 3 people, but then it would like pick up 3, 4 people, and then it kind of rolls and moves around.
Yeah.
Goes outside, more people jump in. They came back with hockey sticks and baseball bats. We were going back and forth. That was a gang called FSU. It's originally started out as a straight edge crew called Friends Stand United, and then later became FSU, stood for Fuck Shit Up. And they went from, my understanding is they went from like a legit straight edge crew to, which included some, guys in hardcore bands, to like a bunch of thugs. And they just started like beating people up randomly, beating up like who they perceived to be drug dealers or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
So that was a sort of a violent direction. That was FSU, but there was other, bands and gangs and whatnot. We were doing the Krishna thing. Boston was doing the violence thing. Also, there was like, vegan, straight edge, like hard edge, like fanatical positions.
Yeah, hardline stuff. Yeah,
hardline stuff. So anyway, so that was Cambridge, I believe. It was the Baptist church, and I don't remember who else played that show, but it was a pretty big fight. And like, there was like 10 of them against like 3 of us. So sometimes, you got to do what you got to do. You got to fight dirty sometimes. Anyways, I forget who played that show. But Boston's always had like a big scene with a lot of great bands. In between tours, we went to India.
Yeah, tell us a little bit, because I've started to read Raghunath's From Punk to Monk, and I know that you're in there. I've seen a couple of pictures of you in there as Buck to Tony.
Yeah, so so we did 2. I would have to like look at the timeline. I know we did 2 big trips to India. I just forget when, like before that big tour, maybe afterwards, I forget. We all went to India together, but then me and Raghunath split off from everyone and we did our own thing. So me and Raghunath like went traveling for like 3 months and went all over the place. And back then, like you take the trains, like 3rd class train, like whenever you see images of like India with a million people on a train, that's a 3rd class train.
Yeah,
most people do, and that's what's affordable. Whereas the 1st class train is a proper indoor with the AC and the food and everything. But on the 3rd class, it's like every man for himself.
Yeah.
And it's complete, just in total chaos. Anyways, we did like journeys. We did like 36-hour train ride through the jungle. We went out to the West Bengal, out to the west coast of India, to Orissa. The famous Jagannath Temple is out there, where the Rath Yatra festival comes from. We did yoga on the beach. We went exploring all over India. And you saw these temples that were just magnificent, and also these small, like sometimes there's just like one guy who runs a little altar, and pilgrims go to see this. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible. Yeah. The entire experience was life-changing. Me and Raghunath went to this country in the sort of the foothills of the Himalayas, is sort of the northeast region. It's a small country. They're mostly Vaishnavas up there, the same religious denomination as the Hare Krishnas.
Yeah.
It's a small country called Manipur, and I believe it's between like Myanmar and China.
Okay.
But it's run by India. But anyways, it's called Manipur. And let me tell you, it was fantastic. It was incredible. We went and stayed at the main like Krishna temple, and we stayed. The temple had this like troupe, this martial arts and dance performance troupe company. So we got to watch these people practice every day. Like the dudes would come out and do like a drumming demonstration, you know, like a circle of maybe 10 or 12 guys or something. And they would like start drumming and dancing and doing flips and shit. And then the women would come out and start doing sword fighting. And
Yeah.
just incredible stuff. And like everyone there is beautiful. The colors are really vibrant. The food is just magnificent. So that dance slash martial arts company, years later on, they did like a global tour, a world tour. We got to see them. But anyways, we got to stay at the temple with these people, and it was just incredible. Like you know, that's like a once in a lifetime experience. And we got to travel around. We were going through the city one time driving, and we saw a flyer that said Manipur's only heavy metal band.
Yeah, and that's the picture in the book, isn't it?
Yeah. I think they were called Phoenix. So we were driving, and me and Raghunath, I forget, one of us saw the flyer and we're like, yo, there's a heavy metal band. That's wild. The driver heard us.
So when we came back, he arranged
for the band to come to meet us at the temple. We didn't know. It was like really cool surprise. So we're chilling. We got to meet these guys. They look like thrashers from San Francisco, like leather jackets, long black hair. But then once you meet them, they were like super humble. They're like devout Vaishnavas. And super cool. Just an incredible experience all around that, you know, like how many people can say that they got to go to some small country in the Himalayas and met a heavy metal band? And they like, you know, we are hardcore. And in India, if you're American, you're treated like a king, basically. I mean, I guess it depends, but we were. That was an incredible experience. Then we spent a lot of time in Vrindavan, which is near Agra, where the Taj Mahal is. Vrindavan is like the holy land for Krishna devotees. It's like the birthplace of Krishna. So we stay in the temple, and every morning we do me and Raghunath would walk around the village. So you get up at like, when you live in a temple, you're getting up at like 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. On a regular basis. We get up and like, you know, you study scripture, you pray, and we would go for a walk. So every morning we'd walk around the village. It was like a 1 hour or 2 hour walk, I forget. And you see everyone waking up, and you see people like in this village, like waking up and preparing they're doing their morning rituals. You hear the prayers over the loudspeakers. Absolutely just a beautiful experience. Like cows walking around, dogs, and the people were super sweet and friendly towards us. You would sometimes sit down and eat. Like there's like, you know, people like the pilgrims come to Vrindavan. So there's people that like welcome pilgrims on a regular basis. Oh, hey, you know, we're having a feast. You guys, it's a kind of community like that, right? We would sometimes get food at this one guy who had a little, like a front yard, dirt yard. And he would feed the people who were doing this morning walk.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you're doing the morning walk, you're also praying, so it's like it's a ritual. Um, and so one time we were fasting, and we went on the walk later, so the sun was out and it was hotter than normal. Plus, we were hungry and sweating. And by the time we got there, we were like getting dehydrated, and I was parched. And the guy was like, "Come on, you guys, come on, sit down." And then they give you food. They serve you food on a banana leaf as the plate, and the cups are made out of clay. So when you're done drinking your drink with the clay cup, you can just throw it. It's clay. You throw it against a wall, and then the dogs or the pigs will go fight for it. So the guy brings us food, and I started eating because I was hungry. Dude, it was the spiciest food I ever had in my entire life. And I just started sweating.
Immediately, I was like, "Yo, I was on fire, and I needed something to drink." And so I saw the dude was pumping water from the well, but you don't typically, if you go to some places, you shouldn't drink the local well
No,
water.
that's right. Yeah.
But I was like sweating and miserable, and my mouth was on fire.
And in my mind, I was like, I need water. That's probably going to get me sick.
But I need some of that. And then like 30 minutes later, my stomach started gurgling. I got so sick, dude. I got parasite infection. I think I had giardia. I lost like 30 pounds. I didn't have much of a choice. I needed the water.
No, that's
Anyway,
right.
and then like, so when you're staying in Vrindavan, you do like day trips. You go to like famous historical places or places with religious significance. Govardhan Hill, um, uh, places where Krishna had spent time doing, these things that are mentioned in the religious literature. So a lot of people go there as a religious pilgrimage, and it was incredible. We took a music class, took a cooking class, studied the scripture, the literature, studied the Bhagavad Gita, studied the Bhagavatam. And there are festivals all the time. We were there for Puri, or Holi. People throw dye everywhere.
That's right. And you're in the. There's another picture of you in the book covered. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty aggressive in India with that shit. Like they're not like lovingly. No, they're like pelting you with shit too. Somebody threw like a carburetor at us, car parts and shit. Like it's fun for the first like hour, and then it becomes like street chaos and just people go like it's. If you've ever been to India, like it's madness. A lot of places are just total fucking chaos. So we spent a lot of time in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
We also went to Mayapur. We spent time in Calcutta, or Kolkata. We stayed in Kolkata for like a month. Went and got a massage underneath the main bridge. The big industrial bridge is called the Howrah Bridge. And it's honestly like one of the dirtiest places on the planet. Top 10. I think Delhi actually is always in the top 10.
Right.
Calcutta's up there. But it was magical. Still loved. You know what I mean? Like people like you don't have to get offended if I say this is a dirty city. But absolutely just a magical place. We went under the Howrah Bridge and got like there's these Brahmins, these priests that live down there, and there's little altars, so they keep it spotless. They just dedicate their lives to their religious practice. We got massaged under the Howrah Bridge on a wooden table with a wooden pillow. And then we bathed in the Ganges River. Do not recommend that.
Did you get ill again? Did you
I
get
didn't get
unwell again?
surprisingly, I did not.
But if you want to go swim in the Ganges or do like a religious ritual where you bathe and you chant and pray or whatever, just go up into the Himalayas, go away from the city, upstream.
Yeah,
Because in Calcutta, right at just near the Howard Bridge, is where they have the burning ghats, where they burn dead bodies.
yeah,
And like you can look at the pictures, like there's just filth, garbage. It's insane. So anyone listening, if you're going to go to India, just go upstream, and it's the water's clean.
yeah.
We were bathing in the Ganges right there by the Howard Bridge. You gotta look it up. Look at the pictures, man. It's a heavy duty place. A water buffalo, dead and bloated water buffalo came floating by us. We tried to run away from it, but the floor is like slippery under the water. It's like, algae and slippery. we when we went to Manipur on the way back, I forget where we were going, but we were going to fly someplace. We were diverted. I believe there was like a terrorist, a bomb went off or some shit like that at the airport. So we had to go somewhere out of the way. And it was really out of the way. So I forget where we were going. We were flying to one major city, but we had to go to a different major city. So that meant that once we got there, we then had to take a bus back to our original destination, back to Vrindavan. So we were, I forget where, maybe it was Delhi, I forget. We're like, okay, we gotta get back to Vrindavan. Let's get bus tickets. And the bus is supposed to leave at like 6 in the morning or something like that. But we're super early, so we're just gonna chill. So we just had like our backpacks. We go and sit down, and we're like, okay, we're gonna sit here for hours. We'll just chill. And we didn't know, but Holi had just started.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
As we're like chilling, waiting for hours for the bus,
random people would be walking by covered in just covered in paint. And it was spooky. Like it was eerie, like because we didn't know what was going on. You just see these people walking by covered in paint, like, what the fuck is going on? So we're waiting. There's only one bus. And all of a sudden, a bus starts its engine. We were like, there's only one bus, and it's not supposed to leave for like another 4 hours or something, but why is he starting his engine, man? So Raghunath goes to ask the driver. And he's like, yeah, we're leaving early. Let's go. And starts to take off. And I'm over back here with the bags. And like, they don't care. They do not care. They're on their own schedule there in India. So we had to like grab the bags, like run and catch up to the bus, jump on the ladder on the bus as the bus is driving. Like I had to crawl up, you got to lock the bags too, because people will rob you, steal your stuff while the bus is driving. We get on, finally run onto the bus, and then I was like a 4 or 6 hour journey overnight. And the where we were going, like the main road, it's like a dirt road. There's no street lights. So the way they drive in India, at least outside of the cities, like they don't use their headlights until the very last moment. So if there's another vehicle coming, and it's not like a 2-lane highway, it's like a dirt road. And so if there's two vehicles coming at each other, they wait until the very last moment, turn on their headlights, and then go around each other. Like it's hectic. So we go to get on the bus, and there's like 100 people on a bus built for 40.
Yeah.
And We got tickets. We go to our seats, and there's like five widows, older women.
The widows are they were all white, and they're in our seats, and we're like, "Yo, I I'm sorry to be a terrible person, but I'm not going to stand for the next 4 hours. So y'all got to get up out of our seats. I apologize. We pray for you." We sit down. The seats were like a 90-degree angle made of plywood with a steel bar, like just absolutely like the most bare bottom, like just the most uncomfortable ride ever. And so you're just like cruising for hours. You're like
Yeah.
struggling to stay awake. And then as you start to fall asleep, bam, you smash your head. We get to an accident that had just happened, literally happened right before we got there. So I guess there was a collision, there was a chicken truck, there was an ox cart
Mm.
with a trailer of stuff, a guy in a motorcycle. Pretty sure the guy in a motorcycle died. Ox was dead, flipped upside down. Chickens were all over the place. And we just arrived on the scene. No one else had been there yet, so the driver and someone else jumps off to help out. Like, all right, we got to take these guys to the hospital.
Right.
They start dragging bodies on the bus, dude. They dragged on one guy, like had his nose chopped off. What they dragged one guy on to the bus, like in the aisleway right next to us. And he just reaches out as he screams and he grabs my leg. And I was just like, oh my God. They pulled like maybe 3 people onto the bus, I forget, but we had taken to the hospital. So now we're going rerouting to go somewhere else, to go to a hospital
Yeah. Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere. It was like a first aid kit and a tent. So we were now also going out of our way. By the time we got back to Mathura, which is close to Vrindavan, we were like, that was an 8-hour journey from hell. And the cops stopped the bus and needed to interview people because it was a serious accident. Me and Raghunath were like, no. We climbed out the window, the back window, like literally just climbed out the windows and jumped in a rickshaw and just hightailed it
Got
out of
out
there.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, bro, that was an incredible journey. I'm not going to sit around. And then we went back to Vrindavan. And another thing is, like, our friends told us, when you go to India, you only take the legal cabs. You don't get the bootleg cabs.
Okay. Yeah.
In New York or New Jersey, they call them, I forget what they call them, but anyways, they're not like the formal cabs. It's like, underground cab industry. So several people told us, when you get to Delhi airport, you will be tempted to get one of these bootleg cabs because it's half the price, but don't do it. You're going to stand in line for the government cab like you're supposed to, and you do the right thing. And we're like, okay. So we get to India, and the first thing we do is like, we're not going to wait in line. We're going to go get a bootleg cab. So we're like going towards where the bootleg line or the area is. And bro, people just come up and grab your shit in India. They'll just come up and grab your bags and take off. Like they think they're helping you. Very aggressive public culture there. So these dudes are like, bargaining with us, like for the haggling with the price. We're going to Vrindavan, yada, yada, yada. And these guys are so pushy.
And then we're like following them to get our bags, but they're leading us to a cab.
We're just following these dudes, and everyone is fighting for our bags. Like there's like 10 other cabbies that are fighting to get us as customers. And we're going on this journey of fighting dudes who are leading us. We get to a cab. Guy starts putting our bags in the trunk. And then all of a sudden, all these dudes start like panicking and talking. Like obviously something was happening, right? I turn and look this way. all the Indian dudes that were trying to grab us, like our band, they split, they scurried off. And this big dude comes barreling up the street, big, hefty Indian guy, looked pissed. And he comes up to us and he's like, yells at the Indian guys. And he was mean, man. Like all these cats just ran. And we were like, oh shit, like what, who is this, the mafia? Like something is going down. And then the guy yells at us in English. He was a police chief. He goes, you stupid American kids, these guys will take you and kill you and no one will know. And then take you random place and you would, and we were like, oh, holy shit. So then he yells at the dude. We get our bags, go back and get a proper cab. Those cab rides are hellish, man. They're like a movie in of itself, the ride. Just, I mean, it's an adventure, especially when you're young.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. So,
and the train
rides are an adventure. But one time, when Vraj Kishore and Vic went, he was in a train wreck.
Train derailed and flipped over, and like people died, and it was like a nightmare. So thankfully, I didn't have that experience.
No. So, so your current practice then, you know, so. Do you still chant? Are you still involved with the Krishnas? I know that you're good friends with Porcel, aren't you? And you both went to a Krishna festival over the weekend.
That was my mistake. It's this coming weekend, actually.
Oh,
not
it's this
last.
coming weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big festival, and it's a Rath Yatra festival. They have them all around the world.
Yeah.
It's the chariot festival that comes from
the place that I mentioned that me and Raghunath went to. The town is called Puri, P-U-R-I.
That's right, yeah.
It's famous, and it's one of the largest religious festivals in the world. Anyways, that's the chariot festival. That's where it comes from. Massive temple, one of the biggest temples in the world. With, I believe it's the largest kitchen in the world, something like that. We had incredible. We were doing like yoga on the beach, going to temples. So at some point, I didn't want to live in the temple anymore. I wanted to pursue a normal, temple lifestyle. So for a while, for a long time afterwards, I still believed in like the theology and the basic principles of Gaudiya Vaishnava, and I read. I mean, I have like Sanskrit prayers and Krishna tattoos and stuff. So it was overwhelmingly positive experience in my life. But I'm not religious anymore. I learned a lot and I grew. I got really skeptical. And something's happened, not with me, but something's happened with the Hare Krishna movement that that made me get really skeptical of the whole thing. But then overall, I got skeptical of a lot of religious ideas. So my position is, I'm not like a Hare Krishna or a devout. I don't believe in the like the way I explain it is I just say like I'm not religious. I have like a love-hate relationship with religion.
Okay.
I live a contemplative or spiritual lifestyle. I still have a lot of the iconography of the imagery and the music. I still have very close friends that are Krishna devotees. But I don't have like the same religious beliefs that I used to.
I certainly distance myself from the Hare Krishna movement.
Yeah, because some crazy shit went down, and that was, people probably know about it because it was a big story with the Krishna children.
Yeah,
but to me, I was like, I want nothing to do with this organization after what had happened. that scandal. And like, granted, I was initially involved with a bunch of Krishna gangsters, but I didn't like. I was also younger. I didn't fully comprehend. Um, so like, I still have like deep reverence for most religions. I have friends that are devout theists, but I got really skeptical. And so I don't have the same beliefs, but I still live, I have a lot of similar practices, or like my appreciation for life and the universe and everything like has grown a lot. But, and I'm not like a hardcore atheist or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I had some things that inspired my skepticism on big metaphysical questions.
Yeah.
So I still have very close friends that are Hare Krishna devotees. I'm like, when Porcel visits, he stays here. I'm friends with Raghunath. When they come to town, we hang out. I still have good relationships with all of these people. Um, but I certainly don't believe in a lot of these ideas. Like the way they put gurus on a pedestal. Um, I'm opposed to a lot of some of the practices. But I have a deep appreciation for like the metaphysics, the Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy, and you know, it was definitely an important part of my life. Like, so here's something interesting: is a lot of people that get into yoga, like the exercise culture, yoga. A lot of them are in America. A lot of them are disaffected Christians that found like Eastern ideas to be more appealing, Eastern ideas of spirituality. So that was sort of my trajectory as well. Like, I was Christian for a little bit before I got into Krishna. I also was hanging out not just with the Hare Krishna movement, but there's a couple other schools like Integral Yoga. There's like the Hare Krishna is like one denomination, and there's some minor variations of that out there. So yeah, I don't feel the same about a lot of the beliefs, but I still have like a deep appreciation for a lot of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think I think that's the right kind of time to call it, to close up really, because I think it's just been to hear your journey from you being involved in the Hare Krishnas before getting in, getting before knowing Vic and Ray, etc., and then your journey through the bands, and then India, and then you talking um, about your spiritual practice now. I think it's just been great. It's been great listening to you. You've got some great stories, and I know that you sent me some really good links that I've been looking at as well. So I
Yeah, like
can't thank you enough.
oh no, my pleasure, my pleasure. And like, I haven't, like, I don't talk about religion or metaphysics that much, but like I still do yoga every day.
Okay.
And I'm still close with my friends. I just don't believe in some of the things. But anyways, the what we were talking about initially, the monkey on a stick stuff, there's a documentary I believe came out in the last year or two
Right.
based on that
Okay.
book. Yeah, it's relatively new. Um, and there's also some other there's articles and whatnot. So I think people should look up this stuff so that they're familiar with a lot of the stuff that people are afraid to talk about.
Yeah.
But everyone's on their own journey. I don't preach to anyone, and I have friends that are involved in different faiths, and it's all good. Like I said, I'll see Porcellis or Parmananda this weekend. I'll probably see everybody this weekend for the Rath Yatra Festival.
Excellent. Well,
And also the singer from Zero Tolerance is one of my closest friends. Like he's out on the West Coast, but we talk all the time. We're very good friends. So yeah, anyways, and if anyone's listening that's like fans of hardcore, then they'll know what I'm talking about. But anyways, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I haven't actually talked about these things for a long time. So it's nice. Like I'm racking my brain as I'm talking, like trying to put some pieces together.
Well, can I invite you back?
Oh yeah, of course. I would love to. I like I said, I had an overwhelmingly positive experience. And also like Raghunath talks about some of the stuff in his Punk to Monk book.
Yes,
and it's an easy read.
It's great,
yeah, it's an easy read. I suggest, yeah, it's a good book. He's a great storyteller. He's very talented.
Monkey on a Stick as well. and here is Raj's book without a cover, I'm afraid, because our dog ate the cover.
Oh no.
But that's a fantastic book as well.
Yeah, it's been a while. I got it when it came out. I read it. And also Vic talked, he's interviewed, he had his own blog for a while and wrote a lot, but he did some, it might even still be online, I don't know. He did some stuff with Norm. Norman does Antimatter zine.
Yeah.
And I don't even know who the young kids are or that are hanging out at the temples and the bands and whatnot. I have friends that are devotees, but like there's probably a whole new culture of Krishna related Krishnacore bands that I don't even know who they are. But best of luck to all of those people. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So yeah, man, I'd love to come back. My pleasure.
The end of part 1.
All right, cool.
That's what it is. Great stuff. See you later.
All right, cool. Thank you, man.